Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. It is our pleasure to have you all here. Thank you for spending your afternoon with us. My name is Jamila White. I am the founding principal of Blackwity. We are a Black liberation and solidarity social justice organization that supports Black communities, our communities, Brown communities, Indigenous communities, Latino migrant communities, to unite together and organize together to help achieve some of our equity and solidarity goals. And we are happy to be here tonight. I am joined by my co-facilitator, Carolyn Erskine. Carolyn, I'll allow you to say hi.
Good evening, everyone. I'm happy to be here with you and get into this conversation tonight.
And we will be facilitating this conversation around tax justice and what that means for everyday Washingtonians tonight. We are very thankful to the Fair Tax Coalition for inviting us to be a part of tonight's conversation and to be able to have a discussion that truly centers district residents first, that takes what we call a human centered approach, where we're putting the human element to it. Because behind all of the policies and programs, budgets, there are us, the residents, people whose lives are impacted. So tonight we are going to be having a wonderful conversation. Our conversation is in English and Spanish. So we welcome you all to choose whatever language you feel most comfortable in communicating. You can look at the bottom of your app or the website where you've logged in, look at the globe at the left hand bottom of the screen, and you can select the interpretation language you would like. Please make sure to select that language no matter to select that language for everyone, because the conversation will be in both languages. I am going to pass it over to the TRC's director, Nick, to give us a welcome and set the frame for why we are here tonight. And then after Nick, he'll pass it back over to us and we'll run through the agenda and get started in tonight's conversation. So thank you, everyone. And Nick, over to you.
There we go. Can you hear me now? Okay. All right. There's always that moment, right? So good evening, everybody. I'm so grateful to everyone for taking time out of your lives to be with us today and to share your thoughts and insights and just be part of this conversation that we've been having with folks around the district. As Jamila said, my name is Nick Johnson. I'm the executive director of the DC Tax Revision Commission. I've lived in the DMV for almost 30 years. I used to live in Maryland. Now I live in the Southwest Waterfront neighborhood. Um, I'm going to give you a bit of an overview of the commission and why today's conversation is critically important. The commission is an advisory body that the council and the mayor appoint once every 10 years to advise them on how to change the tax system. Now there's 11 members of the commission from all across the district. Several are joining us here tonight. I see at least one on the phone. Yeah, Yeshim Sayan is here, and I think Mayor Williams may be joining us a little. Former Mayor Tony Williams, who's the chair of the commission, may be joining us in a bit. And those who aren't here are going to be watching the recording after the fact. So we're really looking forward to hearing what you have to say, as well as being available to answer to any questions that you might have for all of us. We have a really big job. We're looking at the income tax, the sales tax, the property tax, taxes that the district levies on cars and gasoline and cigarettes, fines and fees that we collect in the district, and other sources of revenue. Taxes in DC help pay for our school system and our parks and our roads and bridges. They help pay for healthcare and human services, police and fire, parks, other services. And all these things can help the district succeed and thrive. So that's why taxes are so important. And there's a lot of choices about what to tax and who to tax that have been made in the past. And now we have a chance to rethink some of those choices and recommend changes if needed. Now, Chairman Williams And the members of the commission have identified 4 big goals, 4 kind of guiding principles for what they want to achieve with our recommendations. So one is they want, hey, Yesham, can you text Gregory and explain to him how to join the meeting? Sorry, one of our commissioners is calling me for how to get into the meeting. Sorry about that.
We're good.
So first of all, the members of the commission want DC to have a tax base so that the district can continue raising enough revenue as the economy changes, right? We know the economy is changing all around us. Some people are able to work remotely. People are coming into the district, people are leaving the district. Through all of this, we want to be able to raise revenue and raise it fairly across the community. So second, they want DC to have a tax code that reflects progressivity and racial equity, to eliminate racial disparities, to protect low-income residents, and lift up the middle class. I'll say more about that in a minute. They want DC to have a tax code that promotes economic efficiency and competitiveness to make sure that the whole district is thriving, to advance growth and prosperity for all our residents. And they want a tax code that's simple and open and fair in how it's administered. You know, it should be as easy as possible for residents and businesses to comply with tax laws, to fill out the forms that need to be filled out, and to interact with the city's Department of Tax and Revenue. And, you know, we know sometimes it could be easier, right? This commission also agreed that they want to do a lot of listening. So we're listening to experts on tax policies and economics so that whatever we recommend is rooted in sound research and data. And also we're listening to people all across the district so that our recommendations are shaped by a diverse array of experiences and needs. We've already heard from folks that we've had over a dozen listening sessions, meetings in various groups and parts of the community, in person and online. Heard from restaurant owners, community organizers, downtown developers, a whole range of folks. In all of these sessions, our job is to listen carefully. Now, people have a lot of different ideas about the specifics, but most people seem to generally support our big goals. So I'm going to be really interested to hear what your priorities and ideas are. One of the specific things that the mayor and the council have asked us to work on is the role of the tax system in addressing racial inequity. And I want to be the first to acknowledge that historically our tax system generally in this country has worked to the detriment of racial equity and racial justice. There are lots of examples of people in power using the tax system to push the responsibilities for paying for public services onto the people who don't have power. So I'll give you one quick example, a fun piece of historical fact you might not have known. The very first state sales tax in the country, going way back in history now, was enacted in Mississippi in the 1930s. Now, up to that time, Mississippi and most other states got most of the revenue from property taxes. Mississippi, the 1930s. At the time, Jim Crow made it very hard for Black folks to own property. Most of the property was owned by white people. And so white people were paying most of the taxes because they owned most of the property. Rather than taking steps to make land ownership more equitably distributed, the governor at the time and the legislature proposed and enacted a brand new tax so that Black folks would be paying taxes even if they didn't own property. So in this way, the tax code actually was used to reinforce the impact of Jim Crow laws, and sales tax have hit harder at poor folks than at rich folks ever since. The good news, and the reason that we're here, is the flip side of that is that tax policy can be a force for equity as well. Now, bearing in mind that this is an advisory body, we don't write the laws, this work can have a big impact. 10 years ago, Jamila suggests I talk a little bit about the arc over the last 10 years. So going back 10 years ago, there was a previous tax revision commission. They recommended that the district expand its earned income tax credit. And as you may know, this is a part of the tax system that can provide as much as $7,000 a year to a family, depending on how many kids there are and what the family income is. There's more than 50,000 DC households now who get that credit. So that means that right here in DC, thousands of families have a bit of an easier time paying for groceries and rent and car repairs and all those costs that we all know add up so quickly. It's not a perfect system. I bet there are people on this call who can suggest ways for making it better. But I think it probably wouldn't have happened at all except for the Tax Revision Commission's recommendations 10 years ago. So it's just an example of the way this work can have an impact. So I'm going to thank you again. We know you have places that you can be other than here. So we're going to do our best to make sure that tonight really counts. I'm going to suggest to my fellow my fellow staff and commissioners from the Tax Revision Commission who are here tonight. We're really going to be in listening mode. We will throw in questions in the chat or send questions to Carolyn and Jamila if we have them along the way, and look forward to hearing your questions as well. But we understand that we have the blessing to be able to listen into a conversation that Jamila and Carolyn will be leading. So we're eager to do that. Carolyn, Jamila, anything else you would like me to cover at this time? All right, I'm going to turn it back over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Nick. Jamila, did you want to add anything else before we get into this, how we're going to do our conversation?
Thank you so much, Nick, and we really appreciate you giving us a historical overview, for you bringing up some issues of tax injustice in Mississippi and here in DC, and for you also pointing to some of the impact areas and success areas that the TRC has achieved in the past to impact our lives. And we just want to just reiterate that the work that Nick and his fellow commissioners are doing are going to impact us for the next 10 years. That's impact us for the next generation. What does that mean? What does Washington look like in the next generation? So while Nick and his team aren't those who enact the policies and the programs, they will heavily influence that process. In the district, we've gone through a lot of changes over the last few years. With the COVID pandemic, as Nick mentioned, a lot of people, a lot of businesses closed, they've gone remote. Some businesses went out of business, specifically Black and brown businesses. Black and brown businesses of color was highly impacted during this pandemic and did not receive as much access to as other dominant businesses. And we're going to see changes happen over the next decade within the district, changes to our demographics, our socioeconomic demographics, changes to our neighborhoods, and changes to the way that we use land, that we use labor, and that we use taxes. And so those are the three things that we believe, Carolyn and I believe, have three huge impacts on our lives and our outcomes, the way we use land, labor, and taxes. And so we're going to merge a little bit of all three of those into our conversation tonight. So I very much look forward and thank you all for joining tonight. I do want to reiterate that this is a consent-based conversation, so please do not feel any pressure to answer any question that you do not want to. We will ask that you opt into the conversation. The one question we do invite you and welcome you to answer is the first question, which is an introduction. And so we'll save some time a little bit later. But after that, all questions are consent. We also want to take this time for you to feel empowered. And it's not the time that you have to relive any trauma or relive any pain from the past that may be triggering. We understand that when we talk about justice and injustice, when we talk about the impacts that tax has had, which sometimes means loss, generational loss to some of us, that's really personal. And it's real and it hurts. But we want to use this opportunity to focus on how we can use this tax code, in addition with some of the other racial equity policies and initiatives that are being championed within the administration and within our council, to really look at how we can do repair for some harm that's been done in center communities who have been marginalized and who have been may be negatively impacted by some of these decisions. And so this is an opportunity tonight to also do some imagination. We'll have a chance to do a little bit of imagination, a little bit of play, a little bit of joy as we not only think about tax justice, but also think about how we would envision a system and a tax code that works for all. And so thank you all for that. And I'm going to pass it over to Carolyn. Carolyn's going to walk us through our agenda tonight and let you all know what to expect. We will have about 70 minutes for conversation between us, the panelists, and then we will have some time at the end for Q&A with our audience, but also with our commission. We do want this to be a two-way conversation. So we want some of that time at the end, Nick, to be an opportunity where our panelists tonight can ask questions to the commission so that it can be a two-way conversation. So in addition to the listening that you all are doing, our panelists have a chance to specifically ask you all questions that may come up to them throughout this process, or questions that they may have had coming into this process. So we hope that the commission will welcome those questions and welcome that engagement with the panel tonight for the last 20 minutes.
Ms. Jamila, I'm so sorry to interrupt. It's Catherine. Can we please do a small bit of housekeeping with the interpretation? Apparently the Spanish has very low volume, and so we're not getting the interpretation we need. So we might just need to do some check-in out loud on making sure it's working.
Absolutely. Can we have someone repeat that in Spanish?
Diego, since Reina's not hearing, if you can just come off mute and check in with her, that would be great.
Thank you, Catherine, for flagging.
Diego, are you there? Sorry. So I want to read you a text.
Hello. So I think what it is that if you go to interpretation, you'll see at the bottom it says balance volume, and then to the left it says original audio, and to the right it says interpreter. And that's literally like a balance. If you move the dial, if you will, all the way to the right to where it says interpreter, all you hear is the interpreter. If you put it in the middle, you hear both at the same volume. And I think that's the default. And I'm wondering if that's what Reina is hearing. And I wanted to share a screenshot so that Reina could see it while I'm explaining this in Spanish. But I think that might be it. Because I do think the interpreter's volume is fine. I was listening to the interpretation on and off myself.
Diego, can you just say that to Reina in Spanish while you're on, please?
Yeah, of course.
Thanks.
Sure. Reina, soy Diego. No sé si me escucha, pero fíjese que yo creo que creo que es el problema, si usted va donde dice interpretación, si se fija abajo dice balance volume o balance de volumen, y ahí si se fija a la derecha dice intérprete y a la izquierda dice a la izquierda dice audio original. Si usted mueve el círculo todo para la derecha donde dice intérprete, así solo va a escuchar al intérprete, y yo creo que eso le va a ayudar. Ok, perfecto. Gracias, Reina.
Thank you. I'm glad we can all hear now.
I think so. Yep, she did it.
Bueno.
So I wonder, we can check.
Okay. It looks like she's good. Rena, ¿está bien? Creo que sí.
Sweet. Excellent.
Bueno. So thank you, Nick and Jamila, for framing our conversation. Thank you, Diego, for getting us all situated so we can hear you. I'm going to quickly go over the process today and our agenda, and then we'll get started with the conversation. And you can see the questions in the chat that Jamila has put so you can prep beforehand. So we are going to get into our conversation, and this is a fishbowl conversation, which means that we'll have a conversation with the panelists. Jamila and I will facilitate that. We do encourage you as panelists and speakers to ask each other questions as well. As Jamila mentioned, you can consent into whatever questions what we ask you. So you don't have to answer every single question, but we do ask you to introduce yourself, and we'll get to that in a second. I think that's the last process thing. And so we'll have our conversation, and then we will have a section for question and answer where we will be able to answer and ask questions of each other, all of us who are on the call, not just the panelists, not just the speakers and the TRC, but all of us are able to ask any questions in the chat. And then we'll have a closing, and that closing will talk about what the next steps are. And then that's it for this evening. So we'll start with introductions. And as Jamila wrote in the chat, you'll have 1 minute for your self-introduction. And please share your name, your pronouns if you're comfortable sharing them, and what communities you're representing with us today. We also want you to answer the question, why is this topic important to you? And so I'm going to go in order from the list of panelists that I have here. And Cynthia, you're the first person on my list. So I would appreciate if you could introduce yourself and then share why is this topic important to you?
Hello, everyone. I am Cynthia Davis. I am she, her, hers is my pronouns. The community that I serve is I am the executive director of the DC Family Child Care Association, supporting home-based businesses, also known as family child care teachers, that works from inside their home and educates the district's youth. Also, why is this topic important to me? Because this topic is so important to me because we just recently received a pay equity stipend, and many of us did not know. It threw us for a loop. We were so excited to get it, but it threw us for a loop. We didn't know understand because it was not taxed up front. So many of us at the end of that year, when we received that lump sum, it brought our tax, raised our income levels, and it charged us at the top, like 33 and a third percent on that tax, because it came to us as a self-employed, and many of the people were not self-employed. Maybe some of us who owned the business were, but a lot of my staff were charged also as self-employed. So we just was totally confused about the tax purposes of that pay equity. And then now we're getting increments, and it's coming back around this year. We're just worried about what that would look like. Also, we're looking into the future of 2024. Hopefully, I'm not over my 2 minutes. How that would affect the business, because that lump sum of those raised salaries will come to the business itself, and we worry that it will put us in a different tax bracket and taxing us high again. So money that they're giving us is also being given. So much of it is given back into taxes. So that's the reason why I'm here today. Thank you so much for letting me speak.
Cynthia, thank you. It's nice to meet you. Kendra Brantley. So please introduce yourself, your name, your pronouns, if you feel comfortable, what communities you're representing, and why this topic is important to you.
Hello, can everybody hear me?
We can hear you.
Enough? Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
She, her. And this is important to me because I don't know, I just still feel like, higher income individuals should just pay a higher percentage of their taxes. I just feel like that approach can, I don't know, help alleviate some of the burden on the low income families. So that's why it's important to me.
Thank you, Kendra. I agree with you. Keontae Wilson, we have you next on the list, please. Okay, Keontae's not here with us right now. So, Lark, you're next on my list, please.
Hi, my name is Lark. My pronouns are she and her. I come into this space because I want to recognize my family. This is my mom. These are my two kids. They're adults now. Few people can say they're a third generation Washingtonian and an immigrant by way of adoption. So I'll tell probably more of my story in this conversation, but that's why I'm here for my family.
Thank you, Lark. It's nice to meet you. Well, nice to see you again. Luther Lacey, I have you next, please.
Hey everybody, I'm Luther. I am born in Washington, D.C. I'm a member of the People for Fairness Coalition. I reside in Ward 6. I reside at Capitol Hill Towers. I'm part of their tenant association. I guess I'm here because I want to learn first and foremost and share my limited experience with the tax system in DC. But also I do recognize that things are changing and the makeup and the landscape of the district in terms of race and certain ethnic groups that's coming in and out of the city and that it's going to change and so I want to be prepared in trying to understand and help shape the framework for what it's going to look like in the future. And so yeah, I was eager to use this opportunity not only to share my lived experience, but also as an opportunity to learn and possibly in the future help shape what the system going to look like going forward.
Thank you, Luther.
Mm-hmm.
Next on my list is Paradise. Please share your name, your pronouns if you're comfortable, what communities you're representing, and why this conversation is important to you.
Hello, my name is Paradise Mingo. My pronouns are her and she. I am certainly representing the community of homeowners, new homeowners under the programs due to the extremely high cost of living here in DC, and also representing the community that are moms, but also taking care of senior. I take care of my dad as his companion. He has Alzheimer's. So there are a lot of tax inequality with that. So that's what I'm here to represent and to hopefully shed some light on.
Thank you very much. The next person I have on my list is Rochelle.
Hello, I'm Michelle Ellison. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. And I'm the Senior Mentor Advisor at People for Fairness Coalition and the lead of the Rhonda Whitaker Streets Like DC Women's Initiative. However, I have lived experience being formerly homeless for 17 years with co-occurring disorders. And the reason that this is so important to me is because through my elevations and trying to just elevate through life, I've run into so many obstacles. Living in a tax credit building, well, I could not attend college, and I'm currently a senior in college, getting a dual bachelor's degree, and also having a job and going to work and trying to wean myself off the Social Security system, SNAP benefit system. I get paid taxes into the DC tax system, the Social Security, the Medicaid, and then when the contract was over, I went back to Social Security, and they taxed me for every dollar of every $2 that I made. And I'm here, and this is important to me because I know I'm not the only one this is happening to. We are being held down in the poverty level because we can't get ahead because of the debt we incur, the taxes that we have to pay. And then when you have to rely on SSI, they're taxing you on top of being taxed when you work already. So I'd like to understand more about that and bring a voice to the community for the people that are experiencing some of the hurdles that I've experienced myself.
Rochelle, you bring up a lot of important points, as have others who have introduced themselves. Thank you very much. Reina?
Hola, buenas noches. Mi nombre es Reina Moreno. Mi pronombre es ella. Vivo aquí en Washington, D.C., en la zona 4. Y me siento muy orgullosa de estar aquí. Soy de la Alianza Nacional de las Trabajadoras del Hogar y ahorita estoy representando a Catherine. Y me gusta estar aquí porque quiero que conocer mis derechos y que conozcan las quejas que cada madre de familia como yo, que soy madre soltera, enfrentamos cada vez que tenemos que presentar nuestros impuestos sí o sí. Entonces, tengo mucho que decir, pero por ahora solo esto. Gracias. Gracias por escucharme.
Gracias, Reina. Mucho gusto. And the last person I have on this list is Robert.
Good evening, I'm Robert, and I'm a long-term DC resident. And my concern is that I was employed with I was employed with a company in Virginia from 2019 2017 to 2019. And I had my taxes done through UPO, United Planning Organization, with a tax preparer. And I should have got refunds from the Commonwealth of Virginia, which I did not. And the preparer would send the forms, the W-2 forms, my ID, all the information needed for me to get a refund for those 3 years. And I was denied my denied my tax refunds from the Commonwealth of Virginia. And that's not only the concern, it's also unemployment benefits. It's just a concern about the Commonwealth of Virginia I have a problem with concerning taxes. That's just how I feel about it. So I'd like to learn more, and I'd like to know the reason why I'm denied what belongs to me.
Thank you, Robert.
You're welcome.
There are lots of experiences here that are being represented, lots of stories, lots of narratives. And so I'm excited to get into this conversation to start to answer some of these questions that you all have. And the first question I have for you, and remember, please feel free to respond if you feel compelled to respond. You don't have to respond to every question. So the next question I have for you is let me back up a little bit. Kimberly, just a heads up that we're only doing introductions for panelists at the moment. And so that is why you haven't been asked to introduce yourself. So thank you. So I'm sorry for that digression. So the question I have for you as panelists, how does the tax system impact you? How is this tax system being used to help you, such as earned income tax credit or the child tax credit? And how does this tax system hurt you? I'll put that in the chat again as well. Feel free to take yourselves off mute or write in the chat and I can respond for you.
I'm Rochelle, I'll jump in. I believe that the earned income tax credit helped a lot, especially through the pandemic, and I was working at UPO as a resource case manager and wasn't making over an amount of money that would take me out of the poverty level. So the earned income tax credit helped so much. Where taxes are hurting us is, as I explained before, you pay majority of your taxes, like your take home is way far away from your gross. When you're working and you're living in the poverty level, when you know that the rich can afford to pay more taxes and you can take less taxes from those living in poverty. And then when you're paying into these taxes, as I stated before, and I'll be transparent. I have SLE lupus. I have to have Medicaid. I had a heart attack. I had stents in my heart. I can't afford to let go of the medical part of the assistance from the DC government. I can afford to let go of the SSI and the STEP benefits. But once they get to that Medicaid, I have a housing voucher that's tied to an organization that I no longer utilize their services. So if I let that Medicaid go, I become homeless again in Washington. So that's where it's definitely hurting more than it's helping for me.
Thank you for responding. Does anyone else want to respond to this? How does the tax system impact you? How is this tax system being used to help you? And how does the tax system hurt you?
Let me, can y'all hear me? Yeah, let me jump in because I had a similar experience to Cynthia. I was working with the, I don't know if I should say who they was, but I was working with the Board of Elections, right? And okay, so poll worker, and they gave us, I guess they gave us like erroneous information because they had told us that we were eligible. Like if we didn't make over $600 for the that term that first primary, that we didn't have to file taxes. When in fact it was $600 for the year. So by the time we worked the second, the general election, of course we went over. So they didn't take any taxes out, of course. And so at that point it was like, well, okay. So then fast forward to January, April, when you file. Okay, so I filed, but now the money's gone. I done spent that money, and here they come expecting almost like a third of what you made from that little bit of work, and it's gone. And I'm like, what can be done to rectify that? I mean, it's got to be some kind of way where at the very least, if you're going to do that, just take the taxes out then. I mean, I would have preferred you just took them out at that moment, gave me what I earned, but to wait until it just didn't seem fair, and it kind of set me back because of course then I had to come out of pocket, find money that I didn't really have, but I got it done, but I think they need to take a look at that, yeah.
Hi, everyone.
One of the ways is impacted.
Oh, sorry, Luther. Sorry.
Well, you good. Go.
Oh, yeah. Hi, everyone. I think a part of okay, I'm sorry, somebody else is talking. I can wait. Oh, okay. Can you hear me? Oh, hi. I think one of the issues that we're really facing is that where we live, we're not even getting into taxation, but our representation and all that kind of stuff. But I'm just saying, where we live is very expensive, and when you get that lump sum off the top end, it makes you look like, okay, I got this money, I finally can pay some bills. Then when you get at the end of the year, you have to file your taxes. And I think they should have been upfront saying that it's $600 for the year and it's not $600 Every time you get it, as long as you're not paid over a certain amount, then you don't have to file it. I think that's one of the biggest issues that came across with us as being child care home-based businesses. How we're viewed, we paid the less, but pay sometimes as equal as our counterparts. Child development homes receive low subsidies, and I think we should get a little bit of a break with taxes, because we're still taxed as high as centers who have hundreds of thousands of income. We sometimes care for 3 children. We sometimes care for 2 children, up to 12 children, no more than 12 children in our home. And it's very rarely that you'll have a program that will care for 12 children. But I think because we in that same tax bracket, they always include home-based businesses as if we're attorneys, or we just grouped automatically in with a group of people as if we have these high incomes, and we really don't. We majority, because for the first time in history, the person who owns the family childcare business is finally getting a salary. Usually it was no labor there at all. It really, you could pay your staff. That's how little the money was. You pay your staff, but you don't get paid, because even though you work there. So I'm just happy. Hopefully, we can get some type of resolve for that, to figure out a tax system that is equally for home-based businesses, especially those working in childcare, because we do receive the lowest income of DC public schools, charter schools, and child development centers.
Thank you, Cynthia. So what I've heard so far, some broad issues. The percentage that is taxed, or the amount that is taxed. I'm hearing about when to take taxes out, and being very upfront about how much is being taken out, and then also when it's taken out. And then Cynthia, hearing from you also, and I'm sorry, I'm summarizing. I'm hearing from you about also the percentage of taxes and the amount that taxes are taken out, and how that impacts income. Are there other people who want to share, who want to answer this question before we move to the next one?
Yes, hi. So yeah, as a mom, when I was working, obviously the child tax credit was helpful. When the pandemic came, however, I lost my job. Soon after, then I lost my mother, and my kids finished school pretty much online, and it was very challenging. So they came of age as well. And so now we're at a interesting point where like they're holding jobs to, pay the rent basically. I am still not working, and I just find it interesting. We went to UDC to get our taxes done at the clinic, and it was interesting like what the other gentleman said. And I've been hearing like these different things like, oh, we could have gotten possibly like renter support, but it would have I would have to file taxes. So I just feel like as a family, especially, like we're being hurt more for the fact that I'm not working, and they're also being declared dependents, but I can't file them as dependents because I'm not working. So yeah, there's just a lot of, I feel like, an unjust type situation going on, especially when you're poor and you're struggling to, keep the bills being paid and keep our stomachs full and all that stuff. So, yeah. But yeah, these free clinics, I feel like they definitely need to be much more aware of the tax laws and what we're definitely due or owed. I definitely have not had quite the greatest experience with them as well.
Thank you, Lark. Serena?
Sí, gracias. Yo decía, soy madre soltera, me toca pues declarar mis impuestos año a año y pues me siento frustrada al ver que las leyes están como a favor de ellos mismos, no de nosotros, como la comunidad que somos, que sí o sí pagamos nuestros impuestos. Me sentí tan mal cuando se vino el crédito tributario de mis hijos, que para la pandemia pues yo perdí trabajo, me enfermé, igual que la compañera también perdió su madre, yo perdí mi familia, quedé prácticamente sola en la calle y es una lástima que otro no pueda ver lo que uno siente dentro de su corazón en ver que le están quitando de lo poco que uno gana y que después vienen y te lo vuelven a quitar. Me sentí frustrada porque en cambio este año me dieron menos por mis niños. Entonces, resulta de que no es lo suficiente porque el dinero que me dan vuelve a la ciudad, vuelve en el motivo de que tengo que pagar renta, que tengo que pagar comprar comida, que tengo que pagar la luz, que tengo que pagar el teléfono. Y bueno, yo digo que cómo podemos nosotras obtener algún tipo de crédito fiscal para que estas pequeñas empresas atiendan a familias de bajos ingresos como yo, como esta familia de que tenemos la necesidad y aún no están viendo lo que nosotros somos importante para la comunidad, porque pagamos nuestros impuestos, cuidamos de nuestros hijos, como dijo la compañera, y cuidamos de los ancianos y trabajamos duro. Y si ganas poquito te afecta, si ganas mucho también. Entonces, muchas gracias por escuchar estas palabras de mí y espero, ¿verdad?, una solución a este problema. Gracias.
Thank you, Reina. Gracias, Reina. So what I'm hearing, and I want to do a summary again of Cynthia's. And so Cynthia, you're talking specifically about a tax credit for small businesses for low-income families. Lark, what I'm hearing you talk about is around being very aware of tax laws, particularly for the free clinics, and also the impact that having dependents who are working when you're not working has had on you and your family. Reina, I'm hearing from you something similar around dependent laws, but also the impact of having so many taxes taken out when you're working hard, when you're living in a city that is expensive, but that your money has to go to other places. So much is taking out. Jamila, I'm going to pass it to you to go to our next questions.
Thank you so much, Carolyn. Thank you, everyone who has spoken. I want to just see if anyone else, before we move on, we may have time for one more, wants to answer the question that Carolyn posed. How is the current tax code impacting you? How is it helping you? How is it hurting you? Is there anyone else that wants to comment? I see we have someone on the phone. Do we have a phone user? Okay. Thank you, Carolyn, for leading us through our first set of questions. So thinking about the conversation we just had, where we identified how the current tax system is being used to help us in some cases. There was a lot of consensus around support for the earned income tax credit and also the child tax credit. But then we also identified, as Carolyn mentioned, how the tax code has hurt you all. Taking away that child tax credit, what I hear has impacted not having the flexibility for low-income families to be able to claim dependents if they're not working, and some of the other flexibilities to still have access to incomes that come from tax, but also injustice. What I heard is coming up in terms of low-income workers, businesses, small businesses that are micro businesses and that are not generating a lot of income are still being taxed at the same rate as high income businesses, as high earning businesses, as high earning people. So there's an injustice, injustice that's happening. So thinking about some of these injustices that have been identified tonight and other ones from the past that have hurt progress for Black and Brown communities, Black and migrant communities in the district. How can the TRC use this moment where they are thinking about the next 10 years of DC's tax code, given all of the priorities that Nick mentioned in the beginning, given the fact that there has been a loss of revenue from downtown businesses that have left the district during the pandemic, have gone remote. There has been certain folks who have decided to leave the district and go be a resident somewhere else, given the ability to work remotely. And so thinking about that, and there's a need to generate revenue, there's also a need to ensure that we have equitable and inclusive tax code that's going to do some repair to some of these harms that was mentioned by you all. So thinking about all of this, how can the TRC use this moment, use the tax code to start repairing and addressing some of the issues that you all mentioned?
I wanted to give my colleagues a chance to say something, so hopefully I'll go in if no one else goes in.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Let's hear from someone who may have not had the opportunity to speak yet. How can the TRC use this moment to repair some of the harm that's been mentioned, some of the inequities that's been mentioned from our current tax code? Go ahead, Cynthia, get us started. Oh, wait a minute, Robert, did you come off mute? I can't tell.
Yeah, I do have something to say about that. I've established a payment plan with DC Finance, and I am making payments. I constantly make payments. Before the pandemic, I made payments. Mind you, my income taxes, I'm less than $10,000 in debt with the IRS. I made payments with them before the pandemic. And soon after the pandemic, I've established payments with DC Finance, which I am making those payments right now. Suddenly, I get a statement from IRS owing quite a large amount, like $3,000, close to $4,000. And I'm not sure who to make these payments to. I'm at that point now. I'll continue to make the payments with DC Finance, but I will have to establish a payment plan now that I recently got this bill from IRS to make payments with them. So I'm making two payments. And I'm less than $10,000. Each one of my checks were garnished from the year 2017 up until now. And then I get a big bill from the state, federal, that I'm owing more money. So I'm making two payments here. It has an impact on me. Seems like I'm spending money. Okay, seems like they notice that I'm garnishing these checks. and it resulted up to $8,000 each one from 2017.
Thank you,
I'm
Robert.
just constantly making payments, and close to $500 is taken out of each one of my paychecks two times a month.
Thank you so much, Robert. So what we're hearing is that you're a low wage worker. You're bringing in around 10,000 in terms of taxable income, and on that taxable income, it's getting taxed at higher rates. It sounds like rates may be equivalent to a consultant, independent consultant, which are higher. Um, that's coming at a surprise
I
and
think most of it is resulting from the past.
resulting from the past, and you've just been paying and paying and paying, and it's still not reducing,
Yeah,
and
constantly
just
paying
a circle, like a debt that just keeps you in debt, just paying
since 2012.
since
I made
2012.
payments until the pandemic got in the way, so I cut out making payments. Now I'm starting up again.
So some of the things like past harms that's been done, past issues, there should be a way, an outlet for that debt to be forgiven, is what I'm hearing, or at least
It seemed like, to me, seemed like they just noticed my method that I'm having these checks garnished.
and just keep garnishing. So
For
they're just
less than $10,000. It's not over 10,000.
yeah.
For less
Thank
than
you.
$10,000, and they're constantly. And I'm purposely having them garnished towards it, but still, I'm owing, paying money out of my pocket to DC Finance.
Thank you, Robert. I think we've heard a lot of good suggestions from you that can be incorporated. Lark, did I see you come off mute?
Yes, hi. Speaking about like garnishing wages, it was reminding me of actually my kid's father. Um, so um, I remember he was complaining to me about how he had to pay child support and they were garnishing his wages and also taking a lot out of his taxes. And that definitely did not leave us in good terms. And it was like, I'm not doing it to you, but obviously, I mean, I mean, to kind of break down the story a little bit, we did have a domestic incident, and it was interesting enough that I'm going in there to the courthouse to get a protective order. I was told to do so because I was also in a transitional living facility, and they told me I had to do that to be in that transitional living facility. So another system in play. And then as soon as I tell my story, apparently the child support office, like they just rolled me in there and filed those court papers. And so it was just definitely a strain in our relationship. And if you don't know, if you're also on assistance, food stamps or TANF, you don't even really receive that money. So the government feels like they need to be repaid for the few funds that I get. So, you know, I might have gotten a check here and there every once in a while, but not really. So not only did it just put us in a bad relationship, you know, it was just really bad all around. And you know, it's just interesting when you're so poor like I am, and you have to report everything. It's just it's really crippling. Like you have to stay poor to receive food, to receive any type of like actual needs that you need: a roof over your head, food on your stomach. And so it's just it's very crippling and oppressive in its own way.
Thank you, Lark, for sharing your story and being very vulnerable and intimate with us. We want to uplift Lark and send her some love and support for bringing everything. And what I heard is that families in DC, we're intersectional. We have different systems that are interplaying on our lives at the same time that's creating these barriers that make it hard for us to progress. And it just keep putting us in this cycle, this loop. Somebody put in the chat that white wealth is 81 times to 81 times Black wealth in the district. So we're talking about communities who have been disinvested, who have been marginalized, who are being impacted by multiple systems at the same time. So you're getting child support, but you're also getting public assistance because the district is one of the most expensive places in the country to live. It's also one of the richest places in the world as well. We know that the district doesn't have a resource problem, despite what those say. It has a concentration of resource problem, in my opinion. And so what we're hearing is that instead of providing opportunities and programming looking holistically on how to support low income families, how to support families in poverty. Families in poverty are still being double taxed. Families in poverty are having poor taxes put on them. They're having to make decisions between, do I keep my social service benefits so I can keep a roof over my head and food in my belly, like I heard, or do I enter these other avenues instead of programming guaranteed housing, guaranteed food, guaranteed jobs type of programming so we can progress. And we also heard the impact that it's having on mental health. You didn't use that word, but you said it's crippling. And we know that Coretta Scott King told us that poverty is violence, and we know violence is mental health attacks on our mental and physical health. So thank you, Lark, for elevating that. We're seeing how these systems are interplaying on our body, our mind, our soul, our communities. Luther, I see you had your hand up.
Yeah, you know, we don't want to like resort to not filing, you know, with the, you know what I'm saying? Because we don't mind paying taxes. Just cut us a break. You know what I mean? Okay, if I getting $400, take two and give me two. You know what I mean? Don't take it all, and then I'm left to be scrambling. And one of the things, and I'm sure it's somewhere where we could go and see where exactly our tax dollars are going. But you probably got to search for it, go on the internet. You know, there's not. I don't think it's made readily available to people where they could feel good about actually paying taxes. You know, like if I knew that my taxes was actually going back into DC public schools to help restore some of the creative arts and the music programs and the trade programs that they wiped out when they went to building all these buildings and stuff. They left the education of the young kids behind. So if you tell me my dollars is going towards housing, what they say it's like if I had if I had the option of a checklist to give $1 out of my check for housing or give $1 out of my check for educational, you know, then I feel better. But it's broken. We know it's broken, but we that hopefully, man, we're gonna get it right.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think we can't hear you, Jamila. I think you mute
I
yourself.
said, thank you. Thank you so much, Luther. I said, let's give Luther some love in the chat. Luther, you raised some phenomenal issues and solutions. You talked about what I heard, participatory governance.
Yes.
Citizen-led governance. How can us, the citizens, have a say-so in where our money goes, a say-so in how the budget is being used, not after the fact during hearings, but before the fact? How can we access the tax policies? How can we access budgets for everyday people who aren't being paid to do this, where it's not your job? So there's access issues, right? There's transparency issues, and there's citizen participatory issues. How can we have citizen-led participatory governance, participatory budgeting, participatory policies, where it's really coming up at what we call from the grassroots? So grass up instead of top down. Everything is just top down, top down. Thank you, Luther. You hit on so many points. Cynthia, let's hand it over to you, and then we got time for two more answers on this question before we go to the next one. So we'll go Cynthia, then Rochelle.
Okay, I think I'm probably going into the second one. How I thought of ways of alleviating some of this burden on low income families was one, teaching people about taxes, letting them understand, like having more classes on how do you maneuver when you get a lump sum of money, what other ways that you can spend it without having it just taxed. If I put it in a retirement plan for myself, how would that affect me long term, or would it hinder me on the back end, alleviating some of the penalties and stop these recycling in that I owe and I owe and I owe. And I've heard somebody use the word, it's like a grandfathering in, or, for some people, I forgot what they call the word. It's like once, once you owe taxes for a certain amount of time, a forgiveness sort of. I think that's what I'm talking about. So that Robert won't have these same issues over and over. He can have some type of wealth. Just because I own a home in DC doesn't mean that I'm a wealthy person. So now I'm thinking about my taxes on my home. And that's how some of the Black and brown communities lose their homes, because now that you're pricing me out of the bracket, I can no longer pay the taxes on my home, and now somebody's swooping in, paying the taxes on my home, taking my home from under me. Flexibility in how to use large bonuses. Can I use that large bonus that I'm getting as a pay equity bonus to put down as a down payment to a house? I think those flexibilities would allow us to do that. Also, some type of tax exemptions. Some leniency on taxes and homeowners. So that's just where I'm thinking at how we can allow that. One, teach us about how to make taxes work for us and not against us. Two, allowing us to implement that into policy and having voices like this platform out here a little bit more often, because this is a 10-year situation, right? So I'm just happy to be in this conversation, because I haven't even heard of the group. And just those are some of the few things that I thought of. Hopefully that helps.
Thank you, Cynthia. You gave us a whole new tax code. I think we need to throw Cynthia, like put her on staff or something, because she just came in and gave us so much juice
Look,
and so
man,
much
Luther, right?
Yes, everyone tonight. And what you said is just reiterates we need community-led engagement, community access, community participation, and community knowledge, community transfer, community education. So there needs to be a much greater effort and partnership with community in this process, not just now, but continued over the next 10 years. There's a lot of equity that can be integrated into tax code, whether it's forgiveness, exemptions, grandfathering in, and other clauses that will help low income people, similar to high asset people. Clauses are thrown in there to help them. One of the things that's not talked about a lot is corporate welfare and rich welfare that is given out via tax codes. So thank you for elevating that, Cynthia. And then I want to give an opportunity to Rochelle to provide the final response on this question, and then we have one more before we open it up to some Q&A with the commission.
Yeah, thank you. I don't want to stay in the problem. However, it just feels like we're in the biggest mode of systematic racism to keep the poor poor and the rich richer. Like right now, I am a senior in college, and I'm $54,000 in debt and living in poverty. So it's like, and that's affecting how I live day to day. They had zero interest for the last 3 years of the pandemic. However, on my dashboard, it says I have $13,000 interest. As well as my student loans. And I keep calling to find out how this is happening, because it's affecting how I live as a DC resident. Like, I'm going to have to pay this money back. And, it's like we're born to die in poverty, and they're trying to make sure that that happens. And even when you get to the burial assistance, you either have to go through heaven bound, that I'm not allowed to have a full term life insurance policy because I have SSI. They want you to have a term life insurance policy, which I could outlive. So it just doesn't make any sense. So I love all Cynthia's solutions. I love what Luther's stating. This has been an amazing panel to be on, and I'm so grateful to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rochelle, for lifting that up again, and everyone else, that because of these integrated systems and that are working, these systems of oppression that's specifically targeting Black, Latino, migrant, and brown communities in the district. You have a district where I think someone was talking about home ownership. You have the highest concentration of Black home owners in the country, I believe, is the DC area. But look at the disparity when you look at Black and white wealth. Look at the income gap. Where I am over in the Chocolate City, we like to say the heart of DC, Anacostia, the Great Ward 8. Our average income is $35,000 a year for Black folks, compared to the average income for white folks in the district that's $140,000 a year. So these are huge disparities that come apart, that came because of systems that were developed to give privileges to some and oppression to others, to marginalize others. So I thank you all for elevating those systems of oppression that are interlocking, that are intersectional, that are impacting us and our communities. So Lark, I see that we have one more question after this, but I see that you have something. So I definitely want to welcome you in, welcome your voice in to this question too, before we move on, which is really going to talk about redistributing income through the tax system as our second to last question. And then we'll get into some Q&A. So Lark, I'll let you input before I turn it. And then Carolyn, I'll turn it right back over to you.
I thought there was a panelist that had mentioned they had lost their home, so I was trying to wait for that. But I wanted to bring awareness, like when we talk about inherited wealth, which usually white people get, but Black and brown people don't get. That being said, I lost my family home because my mother became a ward of the state, and it was just really heartbreaking, the whole situation, because I didn't have a say of her health care. I didn't know what her mental state was. She later got diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. That was of my doing, figuring all that out. But once you became part of the court system, they would never let me know anything. I was basically considered the bad guy. If I showed too much interest, I'm up to no good. If I'm backing away, I'm not interested enough. If you know about the Britney Spears situation, it's something similar to that, conservator, guardianship, and just having your whole childhood trashed, and my mother's lifetime of items trash was traumatic. And so, I had to put her in probate court because she wasn't paying taxes for her house. So I was pushed into that situation to save her from being homeless. And then once she was in the system, I was basically iced out. And yeah, so displacement has really affected me. The house has been changed a lot. So I go through trauma every day, just thinking about how the city treated me and my mother. And yes, taxes definitely had a play. Her mental state had a play. And obviously, when I went to this field trip one time in South Carolina, and they were explaining how slaves stayed under their masters because taxes was too much for them. So it just emphasizes so much to me, like, taxes are crippling. Taxes is a way of keeping people oppressed, and this really needs to stop. I shouldn't have had to put my mother through probate court just to keep her from being homeless.
I would just like to say, and I'm sorry for just chiming in, but it's so important for the government not to give us one thing in one hand and snatch it back in the other. And that's exactly what's happening. They're giving it in one hand and they're taking it directly. That's just keeping us oppressed down.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Rochelle. There's just a lot of information that there's a lot in this conversation. I think there's a lot too that we can continue talking about what can happen, what can change. And so that's the essence of our last question. It is, what type of projects, programs do you want the TRC to consider to redistribute income for individuals and communities who have been disinvested from and marginalized? We've already heard from some of you about participatory budgeting. We've already heard about community strengthening, how community information is shared, and how to be able to use taxes in a way that benefits us. as opposed to penalizes us. And so I'm curious around what other programs that you have thought of or that you want to see that would be supportive.
I do want to speak really quickly. I'm going to be brief because my background is a little loud. I have a 1-year-old, you guys. So I do want to speak about the programs in DC that we do have for first-time homebuyers. And we do. They are awesome. I'm grateful for them. However, a lot of these properties, they get these tax subsidies, these tax abatements, and they get this big, huge lump sum of money. However, they are building subpar housing. There's no way that me as a first-time homeowner should have had even half of the issues that I have had within just a year of inhabiting my home. I have already had to have my roof replaced. I have already had to have I have flooded even before my year was out. Actually, the whole community had to get the roof replaced. We have everyone here, it's about 18 of us. We have a punch list of things that actually did not get attended to by the builders of the property. And it's not fair that here we are in a 30-year, or if there some of them are in a 15-year, but we're in 15-year to 30-year commitments, with these properties, and we have the obligation to pay mortgage and to also pay insurance and all these other things, and we're having these huge issues. These aren't minor issues. Flooding is expensive. It is expensive for your place to flood. It is expensive to get a roof which should last at least 15 years. It is very expensive to get piping done or to get antifreeze added to your unit when you're just moving in. These things are very expensive, in which it should be already, we should be okay for at least 10 years. And I also want to briefly speak about seniors and their income. I briefly said that I do have a dad. He is 69 and he's on a fixed income, and he works for the federal government. His Social Security is only $575. Granted, he stays with me, but what about other seniors who don't have family? And because they did work for the government, they worked all their lives, and they had these unfortunate illnesses happen, where are they going to live? These the tax credit properties, you have to make below a certain amount. And if you make over that amount, you don't qualify. So that leaves a gaping hole for someone to either get evicted or to be behind on rent. So I can go all over the place with it because I have a lot of experience with the tax inequalities. But yes, that right there, I feel like we need to fill in the gap for our seniors and also for our Black homeowners with the subpar housing, because it's not fair.
Thank you. What are some other programs that you want to see?
Well, being as though
Dropping interest
I
rates.
advocate for homeless individuals, I recognize that I see a lot more and more young people that are becoming homeless, and so with all the gun violence and things that's going on in the city, I would definitely like to see some of those tax dollars diverted to more youth programs, because we are definitely losing the battle when it comes to um, uplifting and encouraging and raising our youth. Man, we got to pay more attention to those youngsters out there. And I definitely wouldn't mind any of my money going to my tax dollars going to help those kids out there, man, that some of them are just lost. No.
Thank you.
The
So
payments, the payments
paradigm,
would be so bad without the interest rates.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that, Robert?
The interest rates are high, and the payments wouldn't be so bad without them.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Rochelle, I see your hand up too.
Excuse me, yes. I think there should be programs that they have for people living in, in a certain level of income brackets. And they should be clear and we should have clarity on what is expected of us with the paying the taxes. And we should have programs to help people that don't understand the tax system so that we can understand more of what's happening to us as we're being taxed for all these different revenues and all these different places and all these different things that we're living through. And I just believe that that would help so much more if we had more clarity and more insight instead of just taxing us and then we're still down. We're still in debt and we're never going to climb our way out. And then I think if we make good payment plans on a debt that we owe, they should wipe that debt away after they see us trying.
What I've heard so far, thank you. And what I've heard so far is programs for first-time home buyers that where housing is not subpar. And I understand also that there are benefits for these developers. There are benefits that the developers are getting of subpar housing. Programs that support elder care, programs that support preventing youth homelessness, programs around clarity on how our taxes can be used. All of these things are part of a cycle that keeps us uninformed and continuing to have an ability to create income and savings for ourselves. Anyone else want to share any other programs or any other ideas about what they'd like to see?
Affordable housing for seniors.
Mm-hmm.
Or programs for that. Affordable housing for seniors. I'm a senior. And from what I gather, the income rate for seniors is 46 or more. 46, well, affordable housing for seniors. It's a salary of 46 or more. And I think that's too high for a senior. That's too much for a senior. Although I make more than that. It's very few places, that offer affordable housing for seniors. Not many places.
Thank you, Robert.
And I think the rate should be less than 46,000 a month for a senior. Most seniors in DC are below the poverty rate, less than 23,000 a year.
Hi, I wanted to just highlight that the stories that I've been sharing is the fact that the tax system, the systems in general, have been a way of separating and dividing me from my mother or me from my children's father. And I would love to see a system that was more intentional to keep us together or to make sure that we're taken care of. These houses are falling apart. So it would be great if there were programs to make sure that they aren't falling apart, to make sure that families can stay in them. I know another elderly woman that won't get the benefits of a senior tax credit or whatever because she wants to keep her children on the deed, but then because she doesn't want the house to go into probate court, the horrors of probate court. So I'm like, there has to be a way of taking care of the low income homeowners and making sure that they can age in place with family instead of the intentional harm that happened to not only me, but even like my kid's middle school friend. He lost his mom and his DC house. Like, displacement has shown in so many different ways in this city. So I know it's not just me. I know there's something that was once pushed about the mansion tax. You know, I'm just like, we have the richest people in DC, Jeff Bezos. We have, shoot, Barack Obama. I'm like, if we tax them properly, and I would say, I mean, I'm sorry, I'm a free thinker, but I'm like, free housing. No one should be homeless in this city. There's always an outrage with the DC Council about an encampment being put down, but they're not doing enough to house these folks. And no, I'm against vouchers, because vouchers help the few, not the many. They should be able to like tax appropriately and make housing, no matter what mental state you are, no matter if you, I like this whole like, oh, you know, figure it out, save enough, get a job. Like, we all know that's not the deal. Like, people should just have housing. People should automatically have food and housing. They shouldn't have to break the law or manipulate, you know, their income or stay poor or whatever. Just basic needs.
Yeah. Uh, there's a lot of love that you got around that. Absolutely. These are just basic rights that everyone should have. And as you shared, there's a history of how taxes have been used to disenfranchise, to marginalize, to disinvest. And so these are the opportunities to have conversations around what that has looked like and what can repair that, what reparations around that could look like. Reina, I see your hand.
Sí, eh, yo podría decir que lo que sería útil para mí, creo que es importante que pongan en cuenta, ¿verdad?, el tema de las familias inmigrantes, porque ellos deben acceder a los mismos programas que las familias que no son inmigrantes, para poder obtener, porque hay muchas personas que pagan estos impuestos y aún incrementan un gasto más duro para la familia. Em, por ejemplo, en mi caso, me simpatizó mucho, ¿verdad? Cuando obtuve yo el crédito fiscal por mis hijos durante la pandemia, que a mí me afectó mucho que me lo hayan quitado de nuevo cuando yo más lo necesitaba. Entonces, para mí, eso podría cambiar mucho, que tomen en cuenta pues las familias migrantes para que también pueda haber un cambio, si es posible. Gracias.
Thank you, Reina. Yeah, I agree. Migrants are contributing to our economy. And so there should be access to the same programs that are helpful as well. Jamila, I'm going to pass it to you to move us to our next part of this conversation.
Thank you so much, Carolyn. Thank you, everyone, for your time, your passion, your stories, your vision, your pain, and the possibilities. We want to open it up for about 15 minutes for some questions and interaction with the commission before we close out. And so, how we want to facilitate this next conversation is provide the opportunities for our panelists to be able to ask Nick and the other commissioners some questions that they have about the TRC, this process, the tax code. We also want to allow Nick and the other TRC members, I don't know how many members are with us, to be able to ask any questions to the panelists, reflecting on something that they heard tonight. So this is going to be a two-way exchange. tonight. We also know that we have some people joining us in our virtual audience. If you're in our virtual audience and you have a question for the panelists or the TRC that you'd like us to ask, please go ahead and put your question in the chat, and we will see if some of those questions can get integrated into our Q&A tonight. After we finish the Q&A, we're going to give all panelists one last word. Our panelists will have the last word, and you all will have the opportunity to leave the commission with your final thoughts at the very, very end. So you will have time to give your final thoughts to the commission at the end. So you can think about that over the next 15 to 20 minutes, your final thoughts. And I'll put that question in the chat for the panelists to think about. So I want to go ahead and open it up to some questions. And I want to start by offering the panelists the opportunity to ask questions to the commission. So if you're a panelist and you have a question for the commission, can you either raise your hand or come off mute? And we'll start there. If that's okay, Nick, can we start with the panelists asking any questions they have?
Yep, that sounds great. And I'll just say in advance, I'm two things. One is I'm pretty sure I'm not going to be able to come up with great answers right here and now, but I can commit to putting some research time in and getting back to folks. The other is we did have at least two other commissioners who were on the line who had to duck off. I know one had to go feed her kids dinner, and I think we have one other, Glenn Lee, who's on the commission. Maybe I'm online, but I'll go ahead and field the questions on behalf of the other commissioners who had to duck off. But yeah, that sounds great. Thank you, Jamila.
Okay, wonderful. So if any commissioners are in the virtual audience, please go ahead and let us know in the chat that you are here. Panelists, does anyone have any questions for the commission tonight? Let's see.
I do.
Go ahead. Is that Paradise?
Yes, it's Paradise.
Okay.
So a very broad question, but I feel like it could be I'm sure everyone feels this way. What would be the plan for the next, let's say, 5 to 10 years for tax equality? What would be a roadmap to us getting some sort of equality and balance between Caucasian white taxpayers and Black and brown taxpayers? What can we expect to see in the next couple years, especially surrounding that Washington, D.C. is in the last stages of gentrification?
That's a great question. Thanks. And that's part of what we're wrestling with on the commission right now. So if I had all the answers, then I'd be answering my way right out of a job. You all have provided a lot of really terrific and really quite specific, and in a number of cases, pretty actionable ideas for how to move in that direction. I think the points about trying to fix this withholding situation. I think everyone knows the childcare withholding was, the payments that were made to childcare workers for the pandemic were extremely well intentioned and just a really unfortunate design error. And we got to do a better job in the future of addressing that. I think some of the issues around, someone mentioned the Schedule H program, the circuit breaker program that helps folks afford their property taxes. And we're taking a pretty hard look at that and figuring out how we can expand that and make it more useful, make it more relevant for people who we need it to be relevant for. These child support issues and the issues of child support pass-throughs is something that's very much on our radar. I think a child tax credit has been raised a number of times. That's certainly on the list. So anyways, there's a lot of, pretty specific ideas. And so I think conversations like this one can really help generate good ideas and create pressure and momentum for them. I think continuing to talk at the community level, continue to advocate, continuing to work together around specific ideas, continuing to push is really what it's going to take. There has been, I've been doing tax policy work for a long time, and to be honest, for a long time, I think the racial equity implications of tax policy were something that people just didn't talk about, right? People thought, well, tax policy is neutral. Taxes are neutral, right? They don't ask you if you're black or brown or white on your tax form, so therefore tax policy must not have anything to do with race. And there's this amazing professor at Georgetown University who has who is herself a tax law professor. She's black, and she says for many years she didn't think about the racial equity implications of tax law. Now she's gone and written a book about it and become quite well known as an advisor to the White House around this issue. But this has really just emerged over the last few years, and if it's something that is as important to you as I think it is to a lot of people, I just encourage you to keep pushing, because it is still a new idea to a lot of people. The idea that taxes have something to do with racial equity, and that word needs to be continued to spread and to herd. And I think you guys have raised a lot of really good examples here tonight. I don't know if that's helpful. I mean, I guess I would also say Luther's point about connecting the dots between spending and taxes was super important in helping people understand that that there is a connection, and making sure that policymakers are responsive to that and are listening as hard to folks as carefully about where those tax dollars go as you would like them to be.
You have a question.
Go ahead, Luther. Thank you so much. I will go Luther, then Lark.
Okay, it was a lot of important things said tonight. I want to know, where do you all go from here? Where does this information go? Do you share it with the mayor, the council? Do you release it publicly? How are you gonna get this information out there? And how are you gonna make it, like you said, connect the dots to all the other things that's going on?
Yeah. Thank you for that question, because you kind of set me up. Yeah, this recording is being made publicly available. So we are posting all the minutes. This is a public meeting, so it'll be available to folks. We're also going to be producing a summary, although I'm not sure we can really capture all the wonderful, we can't capture the depth of things that folks said here tonight, but we'll put together some sort of summary with high points. Our next steps, as I said, we're sort of in listening mode. We've got a couple of more listening sessions this month. Then starting in September, a couple of things are going to happen. One is that the commission will start talking about specific policy ideas. So some of the specific policy ideas that you all have talked about tonight, lots of others will be we as staff will be putting in front of them for them to discuss. Over the course of the fall, they'll be putting together a package to recommend to the council and the mayor. And that package, we hope, will be approved by the end of the year. And then we'll be putting together a detailed report that really lays out the thinking behind what we're recommending in the spring. And my hope and plan is to draw on things that you have said and other folks have said in public hearings, to give some life and some voice to the ideas in that report. So I would love it, honestly, if lots and lots of folks would come in and watch this recording. The reality of people's lives is that might not happen, but we're going to figure out ways to get bits and pieces of the powerful messages that you all have served in front of the people who need to hear about it. And I'm really pleased that several members of the commission were on the phone and have been on the line this evening. So what you have had to say really has made an impact, and I know they will be advocating to their fellow commissioners, hey, you really should go check this out. So I hope, does that answer your question?
Thanks, Nick. We look forward to seeing you down the line somewhere.
Right. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, I don't know why it just bothers me in general that poor people even have to pay taxes, honestly. We always hear tax break for the middle class, but like obviously poor people, we have to keep on struggling and not be part of the conversations. I appreciate that we're finally a part of the conversation. Yeah, my question is, will poor people get a tax break? I was listening, when you get a lump sum, you end up having to pay taxes. And I'm like, that's so unfair. If you're so poor and you really need that money, I honestly think you should not be paying taxes. It's a lifesaver. Like it's like, why would we have to do that? I've been so much far to say, we talk about reparations. I heard someone say reparations. I'm like, I feel like Black people should never have to pay taxes. That would be a creative way of reparations. But I remember somebody that I was in a meeting and they were like, oh, if you get an inheritance, you have to pay a tax. I'm like, no, especially if you're poor, you finally got an inheritance. No, like definitely, I just really wish that the commission will definitely keep in mind, if you're extremely struggling, and like everyone with inflation and it's just so bad out here, and we talk about crime being so bad out here. I'm like, it's bad because the poor people are like drowning right now, and I'm like, we definitely need a lot more relief. So please, a tax break, imagine tax, something, anything, tax break, that'd be great.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I think it is really important that we, when one of the things we're doing this year in putting proposals in front of the commission is every single proposal we're putting in front of them, we're saying, what are the racial equity implications of this proposal? And a lot of times it's about exactly what you said. Do we need to be levying this tax on poor families? I will just say, in defense of the hardworking folks over the Office of Tax and Revenue, whose not always pleasant job is to try to collect the taxes to make the city run and to fund the schools and stuff. It's they don't always have the information they need to know kind of who's poor and who really needs the tax break versus, hey, who's just trying not to have to pay their taxes. So we got to create systems to make it possible for them to do that efficiently, to do that in a way that honors and respects people's lives. It's not impossible, but there is definitely some work to do there. So part of our challenge. And the other thing, one of the interesting things about living in the district is district's actually doing a better job on this than a lot of other states. Now that's not necessarily saying much, but the district has actually one of the least regressive tax codes of any state in the country. So I think the question for the district is how to continue to be a leader, how to continue to do even better on that front, not rest on laurels. You'll hear policymakers sort of say that a lot. Yeah, the district's doing really well. Yeah, okay. So the question, I think, from the advocate's perspective is how to keep the pressure on to do even better.
We're also on the lead of gentrification, so that says something.
Yeah, absolutely. It's that's one of the huge reasons why it may not be enough to just be better than a lot of other places.
Thank you, Nick. Cynthia.
Oh, okay. I just want to say that one way DC Tax and Revenue can see things is that actually they know our taxes, so it's not like they're not informed. They're well informed
Right.
about our tax situation and where incomes fall in at. The problem is like it's the double dip on the chip. Like you can see this person dipping in the chip and then they go back bite it and then they go back in and double dip in. One thing that I find that's one of the biggest things that's sort of happening is that once you look at, and I brought that in the chat, once I'm already taxed and you go back and say, okay, I'm gonna go according to your income, you add that tax back in. That's not my income. My income is what taxes is taking from that. And that can also put people at hardships as well as myself. A lot of times I went without health care because I could not afford to pay it myself. Being a business owner, making six figures, I could not afford health care for myself. And it was sad because there's so many tax laws and things that's in place to keep a person like me. You got to have 2 and 3 staff, or you got to have 15 staff. What if I'm a one person entrepreneur and I need to be able to get health insurance to care for myself? Plus, I'm in the aging community. I'm over 50. And for several years, I could not get health insurance for myself. Finally, after advocating, saying that, working in the childcare industry just was not enough to keep me afloat because I was too rich to be poor and too poor to be rich. So I was in that bracket that I just could not get. And then I couldn't get food stamps. It's like a lot of great programs out there, but I could not access them because I was in a different tax bracket, because they was looking at what I brought home was a six figure, but what I actually took home was in poverty. So I would be making $3 an hour, really, if you really added up what I actually took home. Because after I paid my staff, paid their insurance, and took care of all those extra bills, the small business, me, the owner, was not actually getting paid. So I'm trying to, hopefully they can put something like that into the law, saying that they would not tax you twice and say, okay, your income is this, with the taxes in there, and then on the back end do the same thing too. So I just, what I meant, like double dipping in on the same thing for families, especially low income families. If you make $50,000 and then when they tax it all, you only take home 30, that's kind of rough for you and your family, your children. And I don't have children, I have adult children, so I don't have anything to claim besides my home itself. And then that is pricing me out because my home now is worth almost $1 million, and when I bought my home, it was not that expensive. So it's like, it's just putting me in these little small little pocket hardships.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you so much, Cynthia. Um, let's see if there's any questions that Nick has for any of us. Nick, thank you for taking the time to answer our questions. And we want to give you some time to answer any question, to ask any questions that you have for us, um, the community.
Yeah, thanks so much for that opportunity. Honestly, you all have covered so much and gone so in some detail. I don't think I have any questions. I think you asked great questions, and we talked about so many different topics. Um, so I'm gonna I think I'll yield, as they say in Congress, yield back the balance of my time and let you wrap it up. But I do think I do. Do you want me to say a few words about next steps and
Um,
sort of?
Before we go to next steps, let me go to some of these comments in the chat. I think it's worth, people have stuck in there with us for the last 2 hours. So let's definitely acknowledge and thank our virtual participants and look at some of the commentary that's coming up in the chat. And it's a lot of it. So I'm even just thinking of where to go. A lot of thank you from Nick. Thank you from our panelists. We're hearing that our tax system is unbalanced. We're getting a lot of appreciation and support in the chat. It's good to share our struggles, from Stephanie McGill. It's really good to share our struggles. And I also propose to the commission that citizens also have specific solutions. And I suggest that a sub-council of citizens be a part of the draft policy. So we have some specific ask in the chat, that citizens are empowered in this process, that citizens are at the decision-making table in this process, and that citizens are involved in the accountability of the continued tax code. So thank you for that. We have from Nikaya, why are poor people paying the social safety nets they need? Why are the harmed paying for the harm repair? Thank you for that. And let's take one more. I think, Nick, you've talked about this, but I do want to elevate Travis's comment to talk about this opportunity to use a tax code to reduce the racial wealth gap and provide critical human services such as high quality, affordable childcare. So we have a lot of consensus from everyone on the call tonight who is participating to use this opportunity to correct the tax code. So I'm going to use that to kind of cue us up for the final remarks from our participants, and then Nick, you can tell us the next steps. But we've seen tonight, and we all know this, that DC is a tale of two cities, a tale of many cities, where many communities who are Black, who are Latino, who are Brown, who are migrant, have different realities. When you cross the Anacostia River, east of the river, it's totally different outcome than communities west of the river. So much of our power and wealth is concentrated west of the Anacostia River in white communities. And so much of our poverty, so much of our despair is concentrated in other communities. And we've come collectively to acknowledge that how we use land, how we use labor, and how we use tax really impacts these realities. And tax has been used to harm, tax has been used as a double penalty, and tax has been used to favor and privilege those who already have privilege. We know that within several of the injustices, there are several loopholes, several exemptions for higher asset, higher income people that low income people don't have. We also heard about working class, lower middle income Washingtonians, particularly Black ones, that are just left out of all of the conversation. When you look at the displacement in the district from the 1970s and 80s and 90s, where the Black population hovered around 65 to 75%, to around 44% today, a large part of that displaced population is the Black middle class. We've seen that displacement of the Black middle class lead to the wealth gap because that middle class provided jobs for Washingtonians. They were business owners. We know that Black businesses employ Black people more. We know that Latino businesses are the #1 employer for Latinos. So we know investment into our businesses or investment into our communities. We know that not only can you gain wealth through home ownership, but you can gain wealth through business ownership as well. So these opportunities are not being provided at the same rates to Black and Brown families in the district. There's voices that are being silenced. There's voices that are not being heard. And at the same time, our communities are changing. Someone has mentioned gentrification, colonization of our communities. You look at Shaw, that was 90% Black in the 1990s. Carolyn is on the board of the Shaw Community Center. Shaw is less than 30% Black now. How has tax abatements, tax subsidies contributed to this? So one of the questions I want to leave with the TRC to think about but not answer tonight, as you go back, think about where the district is going, the future of the district. And ask yourselves, how can we use this time, we use our power, the power you all have, to change and influence, to redistribute wealth in the district, to do certain reparations to harm that has been done. And then I want you to think about communities. I want you to think about my community, Anacostia, and my neighboring community, Congress Heights, that's receiving so much development, and so much of the development that's happening with our taxpayer dollars. How can you ensure that we stay here? And what happened in Shaw does not happen to Deanwood, Anacostia, Congress Heights, Hillcrest, Brentwood, and other historical Black communities where we're still trying to stay here in the home that we love and that was built. So with that, I'm going to offer any of our panelists one final word that they want to leave the TRC tonight as they think about the responsibility and the power that they have and the duty they have to us for the next 6 months as they develop recommendations that's going to impact our lives for the next 10 years and the next generation of Black, Brown, Latino Washingtonians. So I invite some of my panelists to say one or two words to leave with Nick and his colleagues tonight.
I guess I can just give 2 words. Just mainly more flexibility and more alleviating penalties and the burdens on low income families, just as well as middle class families, so that we can thrive in the city as well, that we love to stay in. I don't want to be moved out of my home, due to just because of taxes. So that's just my thing, just to add to the conversation. Thank you so much. And thank you again, Nick, for spending this time with us. I do appreciate it. I know time is value and is golden, but we do appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Cynthia.
Right. Go ahead.
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry.
Go ahead.
I would just like to say change and transformation, because if it's not change and transformation and how the taxes are being done from the tax credit committee, then our youth don't stand a chance. And we have to look out for the next generation.
Thank you, Rochelle. Lark.
Yeah, I spoke about my mother, but I haven't spoke about my 20-year-old and my 19-year-old, and they're young. I want to state that they were born in Providence Hospital. And if you don't know, it's closed, especially the maternity ward. And I've always said that this city has changed not for them. And to, to not be able to afford this city is heartbreaking. I grew up in this city. I love this city. I can't imagine myself anywhere else. And you know, and I'll just do another pitch. Like, I need free college. Like, I hate FAFSA. I'm pulling my hair. I have a child who's trans and autistic as well, and they're on financial aid suspension, and I have to go through, proving why my child needs to stay in school, and it's there's like nothing out for these young people. So I'm just sick and tired of people saying, oh, they're doing it for fun, they're doing it for kicks or whatever. And I'm like, there's really nothing out for these young people. And I'm like, we all know if there's parent engagement, we wouldn't have these issues. And I'm like, you're not giving anything for poor families. You're not giving us any relief. It is, you're not helping us. So this is the ramifications. This is why we have crime. So I'm like, free college, more opportunities, more care about how we treat people with different abilities, autism, schizophrenia, bipolar. Because I'm like, it is just crazy. I need change and I need it now. Thank you.
What do you want? When do you want it? Thank you, Lark. Let's see, Luther, and then Paradise. I see that you came off mute, and then we'll end. Luther, did you want to say something?
You need to unmute yourself.
Oh, you're on mute, Luther.
Yeah, we talking about the tax system, and a lot of us are fortunate to have had the opportunity to work and have a place to stay, to tussle with whatever the situation might be. But I don't want us to, leave here without forgetting that there's a population out there that doesn't have a place to stay. And so one of the things I would like to see done with our tax dollars is find a way to create more housing and more opportunities for those individuals that may die sleeping outside. And that's where my passion lies, because I do really believe that housing is a human right. Getting it and keeping it.
Thank you, Luther. Absolutely. Housing is a human right. And someone once told me that housing is the only solution to end homelessness. So, Raina, I see you have your hand up, and then Paradise, let us know if you want to comment before we turn it over to Nick to tell us what's next. Raina.
Sí, mi palabra final es que haya una esperanza en los últimos meses, en los últimos años, para poder darles de comer a nuestros hijos día con día y poder llevarles el pan a la mesa y que ellos se sientan felices. pues tener cada quien lo correspondiente y que así podamos salir adelante en este país de muchas oportunidades y que las personas entiendan de que si nos hacen nuestros cobros es porque tenemos que obtener algo mejor. Y como decían los compañeros y las compañeras, también tener una vivienda justa y así no tener que ir a la calle y poder seguir adelante siempre. Gracias.
Thank you, Reina. Gracias. Muchas gracias, Reina. In Paradise, do you have any final remarks for us?
I didn't hear you. Can you repeat that?
I said, do you have any final remarks that you want to leave with the commission tonight?
I do. I just ask that the commission have empathy, and we don't want sympathy. We don't need no one to be sad. We just need understanding of inequality and how later on down the line your parents, grandparents, children can also be affected, So have empathy and understanding that although the world is evolving and things like that, equality isn't a lot to ask for.
Thank you, Paradise. It definitely is a human right. And Robert, I apologize. I forgot you. And thank you all for staying over a couple of minutes. We just wanted to make sure our community has the opportunity to fully express themselves.
Well, that's all right. That's okay.
Go ahead, Robert.
Not much as it's just that the effect taxes have on me right now is my concern. I'm actually experiencing this right now, and I'm just learning, at the same time, so this wouldn't happen again. So if there's anything you can do to make a difference, I would appreciate it and noticing it later. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. And thank you everyone for your time. Nick, I'm going to hand it back over to you to just let us know any next steps, and then you can close us out for the night and tell us goodbye. But I'm also going to ask if your office can connect with Robert, if there is some support that we can give Robert, some resources to help him navigate this situation that he's in. So I'm going to ask if your office can get the contact information for Robert, and that you all can reach out to him and connect him with the right resources.
That would help a lot.
That would help. Let's tell you, we can't help your needs if we don't know what they are. If anybody else has any needs in the chat, but we think that we can help put those in the chat so we can make sure that we help take care of your needs. And with that, I thank you, Carolyn. Thank you for your time. Our company, Blackwoody and Roots to the Future, we thank you for allowing us to be a part of your effort and to be a part of liberation and solidarity. And Nick, I will turn it over to you for next steps and final words.
Thank you. I'm going to thank you, Jamila. Thank you, Carolyn, for doing a fantastic job of facilitating. Huge thanks to our interpreters today, Carlos and Glenn. Really appreciate it. And thanks to the Fair Budget Coalition for pulling this all together. And so, again, thanks so much to all of you for sharing your thoughts. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
We have a website that provides an opportunity for citizens of DC to contribute comments, so written statements. It's also an opportunity to sign up for email information list where we'll be sharing out the progress of our work going forward. So I just posted it in the chat. Please give it a visit. My contact information there. I also want to thank my colleague Mike Hegman, who's also on the line here. He has been producing this webinar. He's done a great job, and he manages the website. And we'll also capture these email addresses and make sure you all get on our email distribution list so you can see where this work goes from here. We will be having one, possibly two sort of town hall style meetings in the fall once we've made more progress on point to the recommendations. Time and date TBD, but I'll make sure that and folks on the mailing list as well as the Fair Budget Coalition has that information, and it'll be posted on our website as well. And then, you know, I would just say, continue to stay involved, continue to be in contact with your elected representatives to share these perspectives. They're the ones who ultimately will be making these decisions. So there's the ones really who should, will want to hear it. I would just say this has been a very powerful experience for me and for the other commissioners who are on, I know. So I'm sure it will be impactful for the council members as well. So with that, I will leave you. Thank you all so much and have a great evening.
And you too. Thank you.
Thank you all. Good night.
Yes, good night.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everybody.
Have a good day. God bless. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Good night, y'all.
We will be sent the recording, right?
Yes, I'll help you get it, Lark. It's going to be on the website, and I'll make sure that all the participants get the link.
Does the recording also capture what's in the chat or no?
I don't think so if it's like Zoom, but I don't know. Maybe Mike, can you come off of mute to answer that question?
Hey, can somebody save the chat and send it to me? I don't know how.
Yeah, it normally doesn't save it, but I could just copy paste real
At
fast.
least the contact information maybe in the resources. That would be great.
I have all the contact information.
I heard about meeting minutes being
The
established.
video will be up later
Meeting minutes
tonight
of the meeting.
or tomorrow.
Thank you. See y'all.
Carolyn, will we get
Thank
the
you.
meeting minutes for this meeting here?
I don't think we have any minutes, Miss Davis,
I
but you're
think,
definitely going to get the recording.
yeah, no, I thought Nick was mentioning meeting minutes. There may be something for him. Maybe I didn't know if that was something.
Yeah.
Oh,
I'll be writing up minutes. They only are about a page long, so they're not incredibly detailed, but
Right.
they do have like the major things.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Nick. I appreciate that. Thank you. Have a good day, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Bye.
good night, everybody. Jamila and Carolyn, huge thanks. Nick and Mike, huge thanks. That was pretty darn amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
Thank you.
All right, I'm
Thank
gonna go
you,
ahead and end.
everyone. I'm gonna hop off and celebrate my anniversary, and I appreciate you all tonight. And I will talk soon. Thank you, everyone.
Have a good trip.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you all.
Thank you.